Okay, we've all been there, right? You're exhausted, maybe a little irritable, and you end up making choices you totally regret later. But what is actually happening inside our minds when we're just running on empty? Well, today we're going to dive in and find out. You know that feeling, right? It's universal. After a super long day, you just snap at a loved one. Or maybe you fire off an email that you instantly wish you could unsend. You make these choices that your normal, well-rested self just wouldn't even think about. So what's the deal? What is really going on in our brains? So is this just fatigue revealing our true grumpy personality? Or is something way more fundamental, something structural, breaking down in our wiring? The sources we're looking at today suggest a really fascinating answer. It's not about your character, it's about your brain's architecture. And here's the core idea, the big takeaway right up front. Fatigue doesn't actually introduce new bad thoughts. It's not like that. Instead, it compresses the whole process of thinking. Imagine it takes this rich, complex process and just flattens it, shortens it. And in doing that, it changes absolutely everything. So, okay, before we dig into the how all this happens, let's start with the what. What are the telltale signs of this cognitive compression actually in action? You'll probably recognize some of these. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can all see ourselves in this list. All of a sudden, the world just flattens into black and white thinking. There's no nuance. A totally neutral comment from a coworker feels like a personal attack. You feel trapped, like you can't imagine a way out of a problem. A tiny little inconvenience? Nope, it's a full-blown catastrophe. And your whole goal just shifts from finding the right answer to simply defending your position. And this right here is the central point. We tend to just brush this stuff off, right? Oh, I'm just in a bad mood. But the research says it's way, way deeper than that. It is a structural contraction. Think of it like a mechanical failure. Your brain's processing power is literally shrinking in real time. All right, so if our whole thinking process is contracting, what does that actually look like? Let's peel back the cover and take a look at the operating system of the mind, the inner workings. Okay, check this out. On the left, you've got a well-rested mind. It's a multi-step process. You get some input, which leads to an initial reaction. But then, crucially, you get reflection, reordering, and integration before you land on a final judgment. Now look at the right. This is the fatigued mind. You get the exact same input, you have that same gut reaction, and then bam, straight to judgment. It completely skips all those critical middle steps. That is the cognitive shortcut. So why does this even happen? Well, the first key concept here is something called spare capacity. The easiest way to think about this is like the RAM in your computer. It's that mental workspace you need to run complex programs, to juggle multiple ideas. And when you're tired, that spare capacity is the very first thing to go. You just don't have the buffer to run those extra steps of reflection and integration. The second big concept is recursion depth. Now that sounds fancy, but it's a really simple idea. It's your ability to think about your own thinking. Deep recursion is what allows you to pause and say, wait a minute, why did I react that way? Is that actually fair? When you're tired, that recursion becomes incredibly shallow. You just have the thought, you don't question it, there's no self-reflection. And here you can see how it all connects in a really simple model. As your spare capacity, let's just call it C, goes down, your ability for deep recursion, or R, shrinks right along with it. And the direct result of that, the quality of your thought, the meaning you make, it just degrades. It's a surprisingly simple, almost mechanical relationship. So if you remember nothing else from this section, remember this. Fatigue isn't just a feeling. It's a resource problem. It is, at its core, computational scarcity. Your brain simply doesn't have the processing power to do its best work. So what does this all mean for us in the real world? What are the consequences when our internal operating system is compromised like this? How does this computational scarcity actually distort the way we see reality? Well, the distortions tend to show up in three key areas. First up, logic. You can't think 3 or 4 steps ahead anymore. You can only see the immediate consequence, which basically shrinks your entire sense of the future. Second, ethics. Empathy takes a ton of computational power. You have to literally model someone else's mind in your own. When that capacity is gone, your mind just defaults to this defensive crouch. And third, your decisions. You stop trying to find the best future outcome, and instead you start optimizing for whatever will cause the least amount of pain, right here, right now. This is such a powerful way to think about it. When you have the energy, when you have that capacity, you're in inquiry mode. You're curious, you ask questions, you explore possibilities. But when you're fatigued, you slip into collision mode. And you're not exploring anymore. You're just reacting to things, literally bouncing off problems and people like a pinball in a machine.
Okay, so this whole model is incredibly useful for understanding the problem. But what can we actually do about it? How do we manage our own operating system when we know we're low on resources? Let's get practical.
The sources give us some really clear practical rules. First off, if you know you're tired, just don't make major decisions. Put them off. It's that simple. Second, do not trust that harsh inner critic when you're exhausted. It's just your OS running in low power mode. Third, if someone seems aggressive, try applying the fatigue hypothesis. Maybe they're not malicious. Maybe they're just out of cognitive gas. And finally, and this is a big one, schedule those important, tricky conversations for when you know you'll have the energy for them. Look, if you take only one single thing away from this whole explainer, please let it be this. The thoughts and feelings you have when you're exhausted are not a truer, more honest version of reality. They are a distorted, low-resolution signal from a system under duress. Please do not mistake the artifact for the artwork. Okay, so for our final thought, let's just zoom out for a second. This whole model of fatigue being a capacity problem, it has some pretty profound implications, not just for us as individuals, but for how we think about our entire society. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? If many of our worst ethical failures come from a simple lack of cognitive capacity and not from actual malice, then what should we be trying to design first? Should we focus on willpower or building better institutions? Or should we be focused on designing for spare capacity itself?